I first visited the old rail junction at St. Petersburg's Obvodny Canal, officially opened in 1873, expecting nothing unusual, just another early industrial train station built from brick, iron, and routine engineering. The archive held a construction photograph from that same year, labeled simply Phase 1 Masonry. But enlarging the print revealed something the record never mentioned: a stone-lined shaft directly beneath the main platform, its curvature too perfect for 19th century tools, its joints nearly seamless. The platform footprint aligned with a circular foundation far older than the station itself. Tracing my finger along the masonry inside the station today, I felt an unsettling precision. Stones fitted with tolerances closer to machine-cut granite than hand-laid 1870s brickwork. And on an 1842 military map, still using the term Tartary, the same location held a circular mark with no explanation. I closed my notebook quietly. Something beneath this station did not belong to 1873. The official documentation presented the Obvodny Canal station as straightforward. Constructed between 1871 and 1873 under the supervision of engineer A.I. Rummel, part of the expanding Baltic railway network connecting St. Petersburg to the western provinces. The station served freight and passenger traffic, typical of the period's industrial expansion. Nothing in the administrative record suggested anything beyond conventional steam-era construction. I began with the standard archival photographs, expecting to confirm the timeline. The earliest image, dated September 1873, showed the completed main platform with fresh rails gleaming in afternoon light. Workers posed beside locomotive number 7, the station's first operational engine. Everything appeared consistent with period construction techniques. Then I enlarged the photograph. Beneath the steel rails, barely visible in the original print but unmistakable when magnified, ran a circular stone platform. The stones weren't the irregular brick and mortar typical of 1870s foundation work. They formed a perfect ring, each block fitted without visible mortar joints, the surface polished smooth despite bearing the weight of tons of rail infrastructure above. I cross-referenced with Rummel's construction plans from 1871. The blueprints showed a standard rectangular foundation, timber pilings driven into marshy ground, topped with brick and concrete. No circular stone base appeared anywhere in the documented plans. Yet there it was in the photograph, a stone circle precisely centered beneath track 3, its diameter approximately 4.8 meters, based on the rail gauge for scale. The stonework predated the station. It had to. The photograph captured not construction, but coverage, new infrastructure built atop something already present. I returned to the military survey maps, an 1842 chart of the Obvodny Canal district created when the region still appeared on European maps within territories marked Tartary, showed a small circular notation at the exact coordinates where the station would later stand. No label accompanied the mark. Just a circle, rendered with the precision surveyors reserved for significant structures. The station hadn't been built from nothing. It had been built over something. Why would a steam station require a stone foundation of that precision? The first serious contradiction appeared in renovation documents from 1908. I found them filed under routine maintenance records, barely noticeable among decades of repair logs. A brief entry, dated March 14th, described work beneath the main platform. Sub-platform hydraulic chamber, sealed due to structural concerns. Stone walls intact but purpose unclear. Chamber to be filled with concrete for stability. I read it 3 times. Steam stations did not have hydraulic chambers. They had coal storage, water tanks for boilers, and drainage channels. Hydraulic systems belonged to water-powered mills or early hydroelectric facilities, not railway platforms built for locomotives that carried their own water in tenders. The report included a rough sketch, a cross-section showing the chamber's location. It sat directly beneath track 3, approximately 3 meters below platform level. The walls were described as polished stone, unmortared, of considerable age. The chamber measured 4.5 meters in diameter. That matched the circular foundation visible in the 1873 photograph. I searched for any earlier mention of this chamber. Construction logs from 1871-1873 made no reference to it. Either the builders discovered it during excavation and never documented it, or they built the station knowing the chamber existed and chose not to record its presence. The 1908 report noted something else. Water channels leading from chamber now dry. Origin and purpose unknown. Channels extend beyond excavation zone. Water channels beneath a steam railway station made no engineering sense. Drainage required simple linear channels sloping toward the canal. These channels, according to the sketch, radiated outward from the central chamber in a symmetrical pattern. 3 channels, equally spaced, each approximately 60 centimeters in diameter. I found a reference photograph from the 1908 renovation, taken before the concrete pour. The image quality was poor, but the chamber walls were visible. Smooth stone blocks fitted without mortar, their surfaces reflecting the photographer's flash lamp with an almost glassy finish. The joints between blocks appeared as mere hairline shadows. This level of stone masonry was associated with what some researchers classify as Tartarian subterranean motifs, circular chambers, hydraulic integration, and construction precision that seemed inconsistent with the rustic infrastructure typically attributed to pre-industrial Eurasian societies. The chamber was filled with concrete in April 1908. Whatever had been there became inaccessible. Steam stations did not require hydraulics. I almost missed the reference to track 3. It appeared in a maintenance log from 1921, buried among entries about rail replacement and platform repairs. The note was brief. Access door beneath track 3 remained sealed. Door predates station construction. Bricked over per safety protocol 1897. Do not breach. A door beneath the tracks, older than the station. I trace back to 1897. That year's maintenance records mentioned sealing of underground access point, structure of uncertain origin. No further explanation. Just a notation that brick and mortar had been used to permanently close something the workers had found. The station opened in 1873. This door had been there first. I requested access to the current station infrastructure, claiming historical documentation purposes. The station master was cooperative but puzzled. No one had asked about the underground sections in decades. We descended to the service level beneath track 3 through a narrow stairwell I hadn't known existed. The passage was damp and cold. Old brick walls glistened with condensation. And there, approximately 4 meters from the base of the stairwell, I saw it, a section of wall different from the rest. The surrounding walls were typical 19th century brick, irregular, mortared heavily, built in the hurried style of railway infrastructure. But this section was older brick. Different color, different size, clearly added to cover something behind it. I measured the sealed section, 2.1 meters high, 1.4 meters wide at the base, narrowing slightly toward the top. An arch shape. Tartarian-style arches followed specific proportions, height to width ratios between 1.41 and 1.61, often with slight tapering. This measured 1.51. The dimensions matched arched passageways documented in structures across regions historically labelled as Tartary on 18th and early 19th century maps. I pressed my hand against the brick. It was cold but not damp like the surrounding walls. Whatever was behind it remained dry, sealed from the station's moisture. The maintenance log said the door predated 1873, the circular chamber beneath the platform predated 1873, the stone foundation predated 1873, or was everything pointed to infrastructure already present when Rummel began construction? The station master asked if I'd found what I was looking for. I photographed the sealed section and told him yes. But walking back up the stairwell, I couldn't shake one question. If it predates the station, what was the station built over? I returned to Rummel's original blueprints, this time examining them with the knowledge that something had been concealed. The 1871 construction plans showed a straightforward rectangular foundation, dimensions clearly marked, materials specified, drainage routes indicated. Everything appeared standard for a steam-era railway station built on marshy ground near a canal. No circular foundation, no hydraulic chamber, no sealed doorways. Then I found the earlier survey. Filed separately in the City Engineering Archives, a sketch dated 1861, 12 years before the station opened, showed the same plot of land. This wasn't a construction plan, it was a site survey documenting what already existed. The sketch showed a circular stone platform diameter marked as 4.7 meters, with notations indicating substantial depth and excellent structural integrity. A surveyor's note in the margin read, "Foundation suitable for heavy construction, origin unknown, but condition superior." Superior. The surveyor in 1861 had found stonework better than what his era could easily produce, and simply noted it as convenient for future building. I laid the 1861 sketch over Rummel's 1871 blueprints, aligning the site coordinates. The circular platform from 1861 sat precisely where Track 3 would later run. Rummel's plans showed rectangular foundations everywhere else, but left that specific area unmarked, a blank space in the blueprint where the circular stone already existed. He hadn't built a foundation there, he'd built around one. I found a notation in Rummel's project journal dated August 1871, southern platform section, existing stone, suitable for load-bearing, excavation minimal. Nothing more. No questions about why stone infrastructure of that quality existed in a marshy field. No curiosity about its origin or purpose. The journal treated it as fortunate, not mysterious. I searched for other sites along the Baltic Railway route. Near Gachina, approximately 40 kilometers south, a way station built in 1870 showed similar features in an early photograph. Circular stone base beneath the platform, far more regular than the hastily constructed wooden station above it. Near Pskov, a junction completed in 1876 had required minimal foundation work, existing stone structure sufficient, according to construction reports. A pattern was forming. Railway engineers across the region kept encountering stone platforms, circular, precisely constructed, already present. They documented them as convenient, built on top of them, and moved on. No one asked why these stones were there, or who had placed them. The station wasn't built, something was buried. I began collecting early railway photographs from across Eastern Europe, focusing on the period between 1870 and 1890 when steam railways rapidly expanded through territories that had appeared on maps as Tartaria only decades earlier. The pattern I'd found in St. Petersburg needed verification. If those circular stone platforms were unique, they meant nothing. If they weren't, Warsaw's Główny Station, photographed in 1885 during track expansion, showed the same feature. The image captured workers laying new rail, and beneath the partially completed track bed, a circular stone foundation was clearly visible, unmortared blocks, polished surfaces, the same approximate 4.5-meter diameter. The station had opened in 1845, built by engineers who, like Rummel, had documented existing foundations suitable for railway infrastructure without explaining its origin. Riga's central station, photographed in 1879, displayed identical characteristics. A construction photograph taken during platform expansion revealed circular stonework beneath the eastern platform. The stones were fitted with the same hairline precision I'd seen in St. Petersburg. The Russian engineer overseeing the project, one V.N. Kurochkin, had noted in his report, Pre-existing foundation of remarkable quality, origins unclear, but construction exemplary. 3 cities, 3 stations, 3 identical circular stone platforms, all approximately 4.5 to 4.8 meters in diameter, all built with unmortared precision, all predating the steam railways constructed above them. I marked their locations on an 1820 map of Eastern Europe, a map still labelling the region as Tartaria. All 3 cities fell within territories so marked, and they weren't the only ones. A construction photograph from Vilnius, dated 1873, showed similar circular stonework during the station's expansion. Kiev's original terminal, built in 1868, had required adaptation of existing stone platform according to its construction documentation. Tallinn's harbour station, photographed in 1882, revealed the same circular geometry beneath Track 2. The consistency was disturbing. Different cities, different engineers, different construction years, yet the same foundation geometry appearing again and again. Victorian railway engineers didn't coordinate stone platform dimensions across thousands of kilometres. They built to local needs, using local materials, adapting to local terrain. Foundation sizes varied based on soil conditions, expected loads and available resources. Yet here was uniformity, precise repeated uniformity. The same diameter, the same unmortared stone construction, the same polished finish. One engineer might have found convenient stonework and built on it. 2 might be coincidence. But 6 stations across 500 kilometres, all with identical circular platforms that predated the railways. 3 stations, 1 foundation. Geometry. The stone conduits appeared in the records obliquely, mentioned as nuisances rather than mysteries. I found the clearest reference in an 1894 engineering journal published in Moscow in an article about railway drainage challenges. The author, engineer P.S. Volkonsky, described difficulties at several stations where stone conduits of excessive diameter complicated track maintenance. At Obvodny Canal Station specifically, he noted, a stone channel, diameter approximately 70 centimeters, runs beneath the southern platform. Purpose unclear, far exceeds requirements for drainage. Channel well constructed but impedes installation of modern water systems, 70 centimeters. For comparison, typical drainage channels of the 1890s measured 20 to 30 centimeters. Storm sewers in major cities rarely exceeded 50 centimeters unless handling flow from significant catchment areas. A 70-centimeter stone conduit beneath a railway platform served no obvious purpose. I found similar reports from other stations. Riga's maintenance logs from 1897 mentioned oversized stone channels requiring rerouting of electrical cables. Warsaw's 1891 renovation documents described ancient waterways, function unknown, too large for current needs but impossible to remove without undermining track stability. Ancient. The word appeared more than once. Engineers encountering these conduits recognized they hadn't been built recently, but none investigated their actual age or origin. The engineering specifications troubled me. A stone conduit 70 centimeters in diameter, if intended for water transport, could handle significant flow, approximately 200 liters per second at modest velocity. That capacity exceeded what any drainage system would require. It matched the engineering of water distribution networks or pressure regulation systems. I examined what little photographic evidence existed. A single image from an 1898 renovation in Tbilisi showed exposed conduit during foundation work. The stone channel ran straight and level, its interior surface smooth, the construction joints barely visible. The workers in the photograph stood above it looking down, and someone had written on the back of the print, "Old water system, built by whom?" The question was never answered. The conduit was incorporated into the new foundation and buried. Some researchers studying alleged Tartarian infrastructure have pointed to similar oversized water systems beneath old city centres, channels too large for medieval drainage, too precisely engineered for pre-industrial construction, appearing in regions marked Tartaria on 18th century maps. The stone conduits beneath these railway stations matched those descriptions exactly. Modern railways had no use for water distribution systems. Steam locomotives carried their own water. Station buildings had separate plumbing. These conduits served some other purpose, or had served one before the railways buried them. Why a water conduit beneath rail lines? The reference to flow chambers appeared in a document I almost overlooked, a mechanical maintenance report from 1902 concerning Moscow's Kazansky railway junction. The report, filed under routine foundation inspections, mentioned persistent moisture problems beneath Platform 6. The relevant passage read, "Flow chambers discovered during excavation, stone-lined, connected by channels. Chambers appear designed for water regulation rather than simple drainage. Currently dry but showing evidence of previous hydraulic activity. Chambers to be sealed to prevent structural issues." Flow chambers, not drainage pits. The terminology implied purpose, design, function. I requested the original inspection drawings from the Russian State Historical Archive. They arrived 3 weeks later, hand-drafted diagrams showing a cross-section of the foundation excavation. 3 chambers, each approximately 3 meters in diameter, connected by stone channels. The chambers were arranged in a line spaced exactly 12 meters apart. The drawings included measurements of the chamber walls, 40 centimeters thick, smooth interior surfaces, and something the engineer had noted with apparent puzzlement: watermarks indicating variable fill levels, suggesting controlled flow rather than flooding. Controlled flow, that meant valves or regulators or some mechanism for managing water movement between chambers. I searched for any evidence of such mechanisms. The report mentioned removal of deteriorated metal components, origin unclear. No photographs, no descriptions beyond circular plates, possibly iron, heavily corroded. But the positioning of these chambers, linear arrangement, equal spacing, connected channels, resembled early hydroelectric or hydraulic pressure regulation systems. The basic principle was simple: chambers of varying heights could regulate water pressure across a network, maintaining steady flow regardless of source pressure variations. Such systems existed in the 19th century, but they were sophisticated installations in pumping stations or waterworks, not features found accidentally beneath railway platforms. Yet here they were, beneath Moscow, beneath St. Petersburg. I found similar references in renovation documents from Kharkov, 1896, Minsk, 1904, and Rostov-on-Don, 1899. Each time, stone chambers, water channels, and engineers documenting them as oddities while sealing them away. The 1902 Moscow report included one final detail that stayed with me. Chambers clearly predate station construction, 1864. Condition suggests considerable age. Built with precision exceeding current municipal waterworks. Built with precision exceeding current municipal waterworks. The engineer recognized superior construction and filed it away as a curiosity. Steam trains ran above. Water systems sat below. And no one asked why infrastructure designed for hydraulic flow had been there first, waiting beneath the ground where Russia's railway expansion would eventually place its stations. Steam trains above, water systems below. I began mapping every railway station where I'd found evidence of these circular foundations and hydraulic chambers. The pattern extended far beyond what I'd initially suspected. Tbilisi's main station, constructed in 1872, sat atop a circular stone platform documented in an 1869 site survey as pre-existing foundation of excellent quality. Perm's railway junction, completed in 1878, was built over what the Russian engineer K.Y. Mikhailov described as stone chambers of uncertain age, suitable for bearing railway loads. Kazan Station, opened in 1896, required excavation that revealed, according to construction logs, circular granite base and associated waterworks. Origin unknown, but construction exemplary. Every location showed the same features: circular foundations, approximately 4.5 to 5 meters in diameter, unmortared stone construction with hairline joints, and associated hydraulic channels or chambers. The construction quality was consistently described in engineering reports as superior, excellent, or exceeding current standards. I measured the distances between these sites and found something unsettling. When plotted on a map, the stations aligned in geometric patterns. Lines connecting Tbilisi to Rostov to Kharkov formed angles of approximately 60 degrees. The spacing between St. Petersburg, Riga, and Vilnius created an equilateral triangle when measured at scale. This geometric regularity appeared nowhere in railway planning documents. Railways followed terrain, connected population centers, served economic needs. Track routes curved around obstacles, deviated for river crossings, and adjusted for elevation changes, but these foundations aligned as if positioned deliberately, without regard for the surface geography that would later dictate railway routes. I found a reference that crystallized the pattern. A 1904 architectural journal discussing star fort design principles in Eastern Europe. The author noted that many fortifications built in the 17th and 18th centuries, during the period when European maps still labeled the region as Tartaria, followed geometric planning systems with astronomical alignments and precise angular relationships. Some researchers attribute this to Tartarian urban planning, a civilization that supposedly built with geometric precision, integrating structures into larger networks spanning vast distances. The railway foundations followed similar geometry. The circular chambers appeared at nodes in a network whose full extent I couldn't determine, but whose local relationships showed the same mathematical regularity. Victorian engineers built railways to connect cities efficiently, but these circular foundations predating the railways suggested a different priority: geometric positioning, uniform construction, and hydraulic integration. The foundations weren't randomly placed convenient stones, they were network nodes, and the railways, built decades or centuries later, had inadvertently followed the same paths, station by station, placing their platforms directly above infrastructure that had been there first. Tracks follow terrain. But these aligned to geometry. The pattern of removal became clear only when I collected maintenance records across multiple decades. Individual reports mentioned obsolete mechanisms or old metal components, but reading them chronologically revealed systematic dismantling. St. Petersburg, 1897. Removal of circular metal fixtures from sub-platform chamber, fixtures severely corroded but original purpose unclear. Metal components transported to foundry for salvage. Warsaw, 1902. Extraction of heavy bronze mechanisms during platform renovation, components seamless in construction, showing no signs of fabrication joins. Weight prohibitive, required crane for removal. Riga, 1908. Discovery and removal of metal apparatus beneath track bed, apparatus circular, approximately 2 meters diameter, composed of unknown alloy, surface smooth internal structure complex, disposed of due to space requirements. The descriptions were frustratingly vague, but certain details repeated: circular, heavy, seamless construction, unknown purpose, metal composition, sometimes identified as bronze, sometimes unknown alloy, and always removed, extracted, disposed of. I found only one photograph. Taken in 1905 during renovations at Kharkov station, the image showed workers standing around a circular metal object lying on the platform. The object appeared to be approximately 1.8 meters in diameter, perhaps 30 centimeters thick, with a smooth surface and what looked like radial channels or grooves across its face. Someone had written on the back, old water machinery, purpose unknown. The object was gone by the next photograph taken 2 weeks later. The maintenance log noted, large metal disc removed from subplatform area, composition unclear. Center materials yard. I contacted the Ukrainian archives to inquire about the materials yard's records. The response, months later, was brief. Records from that facility destroyed during 1917-1920 period. No inventory survived Keltsty. Whatever that disc was, and whatever purpose it served, the physical evidence no longer existed. Only the photograph remained, grainy, distant, showing workers who had found something they didn't understand and disposed of it. Similar patterns emerged across all sites. Between 1890 and 1910, as railway infrastructure modernized and platforms expanded, these mysterious mechanisms disappeared from the record. Engineers encountered them, noted them as oddities, and removed them to make space for electrical systems, modern plumbing, and expanded track beds. Some researchers of alleged Tartarian infrastructure point to similar systematic removals, advanced components extracted from old buildings during renovations, metalwork of unknown origin melted down, mechanisms destroyed because no one knew what they were. The railway stations lost their hidden machinery the same way, and with each removal, understanding of the original systems vanished. Why remove what the record never admits existed? I spent 3 months plotting every documented station with these features, building a comprehensive map of the railway network, overlaid with the locations of circular foundations, hydraulic chambers, and removed mechanisms. The map revealed a pattern more extensive than I'd imagined, from St. Petersburg, south, to Odessa, from Warsaw, east, to Kazan, from Riga, south, to Tbilisi. Dozens of stations, all built between 1860 and 1900, all positioned above identical circular stone platforms with associated hydraulic infrastructure. The geographic extent covered more than 1,200 kilometers east to west, 2,000 kilometers north to south. The entire region that 18th and early 19th century maps labeled as Tartary or the Tartarian Empire. I measured the alignment angles. Stations formed geometric relationships, equilateral triangles, 60-degree angles, and regular spacing that had no correlation with railway efficiency. The track routes connecting these stations curved and deviated normally, following terrain and connecting population centers. But the stations themselves, the specific points where platforms were built, aligned with mathematical precision. The geometric patterns resembled star fort layouts, the angular precision of 17th century fortifications that some researchers attribute to Tartarian military engineering. Star forts were built on geometric principles with precise angles enabling overlapping fields of fire and structural integrity. These railway stations showed similar angular relationships, though their purpose was different. Or was it? What if the purpose hadn't been railways at all? What if engineers in the 1860s and 1870s had simply placed stations where solid foundations already existed, not realizing those foundations formed a larger geometric network? I found a reference in an 1889 geographical survey that noted, railway routes in the eastern provinces show curious regularity in station placement. While track paths follow terrain normally, major junctions align with unexpected geometric precision, reason unclear, possibly related to pre-existing infrastructure utilized during construction. Pre-existing infrastructure. The surveyor recognized something unusual but didn't pursue it further. I overlaid my map with an 1808 chart of the Russian Empire when the term Tartary still appeared on European maps. The railway stations with circular foundations corresponded almost exactly with nodes marked on the older map, cities, junctions, crossing points that had existed as significant locations long before steam railways. The network wasn't built for trains, Trains were added to a network that had already existed, buried beneath centuries of history and forgetting. Victorian engineers did not standardize stone chambers across continents. The standardization came first, and the railways came later, unknowingly following paths established by infrastructure they would never understand. Tracks followed terrain, but these aligned to geometry. The evidence accumulated over months pointed toward an uncomfortable conclusion. The 19th century did not build these foundations, it inherited them. Every station showed the same pattern. Official construction began with site surveys noting existing stones suitable for construction. Foundations were laid, but only in areas lacking pre-existing circular platforms. Hydraulic chambers were discovered, documented as curious, then sealed or filled. And through it all, engineers treated these features as fortunate conveniences rather than mysteries requiring investigation. At Obwodny Canal, Rummel built around the circular stone. At Warsaw, the station platform incorporated pre-existing circular foundations into the design. At Riga, engineers laid rails directly atop polished stone they acknowledged was of considerable age. The pattern repeated: adaptation, not creation; addition, not construction. I found a telling document in the St. Petersburg Engineering Society archives, minutes from an 1882 meeting where engineer N. A. Belelyubsky presented findings on railway foundation work. A passage near the end read, "Several members noted discovery of circular stone platforms and associated waterworks at multiple construction sites. The structures appear to predate current construction by considerable margin. Quality of stonework exceeds modern municipal standards. Committee recommends utilization where suitable, sealing where inconvenient." No further investigation required. No further investigation required. The Engineering Society encountered infrastructure superior to their own capabilities and decided it was merely convenient, not worthy of study. The hydraulic chambers beneath Moscow, the water channels under St. Petersburg, the circular foundations from Riga to Tbilisi all predated the railways, and all shared construction characteristics that matched what some researchers call Tartarian infrastructure: geometric precision, hydraulic integration, stone construction with minimal mortar, and regional standardization suggesting coordinated planning. The term Tartaria appeared on European maps through the early 1800s, denoting vast territories across northern and central Eurasia. By the 1860s, when railway construction began in earnest, and the term had vanished from cartography, the territories were relabeled, reorganized, absorbed into the Russian Empire and other nations. But the infrastructure remained, buried beneath cities, hidden under platforms, sealed in chambers. The railway engineers of the 1860s and 1870s built their steam-age transportation network atop systems whose purpose they never understood. They found water channels where water wasn't needed. They discovered foundations where foundations shouldn't exist. They encountered mechanisms they couldn't identify, and they built anyway, layering their own infrastructure atop what had been there before, gradually burying the physical evidence beneath modernization. The 19th century didn't build these foundations, it inherited them. The hydraulic chambers troubled me most. Not because they existed. Water management systems appeared in many historical contexts, but because their design suggested a purpose railway engineers never needed and never pursued. I hired a hydraulic engineer to analyze the documented chamber arrangements. Given only the measurements and positioning from 19th century engineering reports, without knowing they came from railway stations, he provided his assessment. These chambers form a pressure equalization network. The spacing and diameter suggest a system designed to maintain steady water pressure across significant distances, possibly for transport or power generation. The stone construction would provide thermal stability. The channels connecting chambers would regulate flow between nodes. for transport or power generation. I showed him photographs of where these chambers were found, beneath railway platforms sealed by 19th century engineers who considered them obsolete. He was quiet for a moment. Then, if these measurements are accurate, this system is more sophisticated than anything built in the 19th century for water management. The precision required to maintain pressure regulation across this spacing would need exact level calibration and flow control mechanisms. The removed metal components, the circular discs and obsolete mechanisms that maintenance records mentioned but never fully described, those might have been the flow control mechanisms, pressure regulators, valves calibrated to precise tolerances. Some researchers of alleged Tartarian infrastructure proposed that the civilization used water-based systems for transport or power, networks of hydraulic channels beneath cities, pressure chambers regulating flow, and mechanisms controlling water movement for purposes modern historians struggle to identify. The physical evidence beneath these railway stations matched such descriptions exactly. Circular stone chambers for pressure equalization, water channels of excessive diameter, mechanisms removed before anyone documented their function. The spacing between chambers, 12 meters in Moscow, similar distances in other cities, matched the kind of regular intervals required for maintaining hydraulic pressure over distance. Too close together and the system would be inefficient, too far apart and pressure regulation would fail. The engineers who sealed these chambers in the 1890s and 1900s treated them as drainage problems. But drainage doesn't require pressure equalization. Drainage doesn't need chambers spaced with geometric precision. Drainage doesn't involve mechanisms sophisticated enough that 19th century engineers couldn't determine their purpose. The railways replaced something. Whether for transport, power, or some other function, the hydraulic systems beneath these stations had served a purpose before steam locomotives made them obsolete, or irrelevant, or incomprehensible. The question remained, what kind of infrastructure requires continental-scale geometric planning, hydraulic pressure regulation, and stone construction of exceptional quality? Did trains replace something the 19th century could not understand? The final pattern emerged from what wasn't there. Each modernization removed more evidence. Every renovation simplified what had been complex. Each upgrade erased infrastructure that couldn't be explained within the narrative of progressive technological advancement. The 1897 sealing of chambers beneath Obvodny Canal, the 1902 removal of mechanisms in Warsaw, the 1908 concrete filling in Moscow. Across 2 decades, systematic elimination of anything that predated the official timeline. And the records changed. Early engineering reports from the 1870s mentioned discoveries with technical curiosity. By 1900, similar reports used vague language. Old structures, obsolete systems, structures of uncertain origin. By 1910, maintenance logs stopped mentioning them entirely. I found a 1914 Railway Administration directive that made the process explicit. Foundation work shall not document pre-existing structures unless relevant to current construction safety. Historical curiosities shall not be included in official reports. Historical curiosities? The directive didn't deny their existence, it simply ordered their removal from official documentation. The deeper systems vanished from architectural plans after 1900. Blueprints showed simplified foundations, even for stations I knew had circular stone platforms beneath them. The plans weren't lies, they just showed what had been added, not what was already there. This was erasure through omission, not conspiracy but bureaucratic efficiency. Document what you built, ignore what you found. Modern stations still stand above the circular stones. Track 3 at Obvodny Canal still crosses the same circular platform visible in that 1873 photograph. The sealed doorway remains beneath the platform, bricked over for more than a century, but the knowledge of them faded. Engineers stopped asking why. Renovations destroyed evidence without recording what was lost, and each generation inherited less information than the one before. Some researchers of Tartarian history argue this represents deliberate historical suppression. Perhaps, but the evidence suggests something simpler and more troubling. Infrastructure too sophisticated to understand was treated as inconvenient, then removed, then forgotten. The circular foundations remain where concrete hasn't buried them. The hydraulic chambers sit sealed beneath modern stations, and the geometric alignments persist, invisible beneath the railway routes that unknowingly trace patterns established before steam locomotives existed. I closed my final research notebook and returned once more to that 1873 photograph of Obvodny Canal Station, rails gleaming, workers posed proudly, and beneath it all, barely visible in the enlarged print, a perfect circle of polished stone. The caption read simply, St. Petersburg Railway Junction, opening day. No mention of what lay beneath, no curiosity about its origin, just rails above stones and history layered over mystery. Erasure through construction is still erasure. The photograph sits on my desk now, a high-resolution scan of that 1873 image from Obvodny Canal Station. I've marked the visible extent of the circular platform with a red pencil, 4.8 meters in diameter, positioned precisely beneath track 3. The sealed door remains below behind its 1897 brick wall. The hydraulic chamber lies beneath concrete poured in 1908. The metal mechanisms, whatever they were, disappeared into scrapyards a century ago, but the stone circle is still there, still bearing the weight of rail infrastructure, still fitted with joints so fine they appear almost seamless in the photograph, even when enlarged until the grain of the print obscures all other detail. I visited the station one final time last month. The platform has been renovated repeatedly, modern concrete, steel supports, LED lighting. But beneath it all, if you know where to look, you can still trace the footprint of that circle through subtle variations in how the modern surface settles. Something beneath this station did not belong to 1873, it belonged to something older. Something built with precision that 19th century engineers acknowledged but never explained. Something that appeared across continents with geometric regularity that railway planning couldn't account for. The maps from 1842 called it Tartary. The researchers today call it Tartarian. The railway engineers called it convenient and built their stations on top of it. And across Eastern Europe, from the Baltic to the Black Sea, identical circular platforms remain beneath identical railway stations, aligned in geometric patterns that have nothing to do with steam-era transportation needs. The photograph never explained what had been removed, the documents never admitted what had been found, and the official history continues to describe these stations as purely Victorian achievements, built from scratch on empty ground. I've seen the stones, I've measured the chambers, I've traced the geometric alignments across 2,500 kilometers of railway network, and I've learned that sometimes history isn't written by victors or buried by conspiracy. Sometimes it's simply paved over by engineers who found something they couldn't explain and decided it was easier to build on top of it than to ask why it was there. The sealed chamber remains closed, the circular foundation remains hidden, and beneath platforms where thousands pass daily, the stones fitted without mortar continue bearing weight, their purpose still unknown, their origin still unrecorded, their presence still unexplained. Perfect circles buried beneath progress.